Captain Drestak of the Galactic Coalition vessel Indomitable Fate stared out the viewport at the small blue-green planet before him. Earth. What a disappointingly ordinary name for such a strategically important world. His lip curled with distaste, revealing the sharp fangs that marked him as a high-ranking Vrokian warrior. Captain, the human diplomatic party has docked and awaits your pleasure in Conference Chamber 3, announced Lieutenant Garl, his second-in-command. Drestak turned slowly, his 7-foot frame towering over the lieutenant. They can mate another 15 minutes. Let them understand their position in our universe. As you command, sir. Though intelligence suggests we should not underestimate these humans. Intelligence, Drestak snorted, has become overly cautious since the Arcturian incident. Humans are primitive newcomers who have barely managed interplanetary travel within their own pathetic system. Their inclusion in the coalition is merely political posturing. The captain adjusted his ceremonial armor, the metallic plates catching the artificial light of the bridge. Each plate represented a conquered species or a significant battle victory. He had 47. Soon he would add another plate, one representing Earth's submission to the Vrokian battle doctrine. Tell me, Garl, what do you know of human physical capabilities? Drestak asked, striding toward the door. They evolved on a moderate gravity world. Approximately 1.1 times our standard. They possess reasonable endurance but lack our strength, speed or regenerative abilities. Their skin is remarkably fragile. Precisely. Soft creatures from a soft world, and the coalition expects them to contribute to our military forces. Drestak laughed. A sound like grinding metal. Come, Garl. Let's not keep our fragile new friends waiting too long. They might break under the strain. Conference Chamber 3 was designed to intimidate. Massive stone-like material formed the walls, carved with the history of Vrokian military conquests. The temperature was kept uncomfortably warm for most species, and the lighting dimmed to disadvantage those without Vrokian night vision. The human delegation stood as Drestak entered. 5 of them, 4 in military dress and 1 in civilian clothes. So small, he thought. Like children. Captain Drestak. The civilian stepped forward. I am Ambassador Thomas Reynolds of Earth. Thank you for hosting these preliminary military integration discussions. The captain didn't extend his hand in the human greeting custom. Instead he clicked his jaw twice, a Vrokian gesture of acknowledging a lesser being. Ambassador, Drestak said, his universal translator converting his natural clicks and growls into human English. I understand your enthusiasm to join our ranks. All species begin somewhere, usually at the bottom. The ambassador's face remained neutral, but Drestak's enhanced senses detected increased heart rates among the human soldiers. Good. They recognized the insult. We are quite aware of coalition protocols, Captain, Reynolds replied smoothly. Allow me to introduce General Patel, Colonel Jackson, Major Torres and Captain Lawson, who will represent Earth's military interests during these talks. Drestak's gaze swept over the human soldiers, lingering on the smallest of them. Captain Sonson. Female, according to his briefing, though Vrokians found human sexual dimorphism subtle and unimpressive. She stood ramrod straight, her dark eyes meeting his without wavering. Such a small delegation, Drestak commented. Your world must not place much importance on these discussions. Quality over quantity, Captain, General Patel responded with a tight smile. Earth believes in sending the right people, not the most people. Of course. Drestak gestured to the oversized seats around the conference table. Please, make yourselves as comfortable as possible. I understand humans require frequent rest periods. The negotiations proceeded tediously with discussions of Earth's potential military contributions to the coalition. Drestak barely concealed his contempt as the humans outlined their forces, technology and tactical doctrines. Your nuclear weapons are of course primitive by coalition standards, he interrupted during Colonel Jackson's presentation, and your conventional forces would be considered little more than ceremonial by most established member worlds. Perhaps, Jackson replied, her voice steady, but we believe our adaptive strategies and unconventional tactics might offer new perspectives. Unconventional indeed, Drestak said with a dismissive wave. General Patel, surely you don't expect your soldiers to serve alongside Drakelian shock troops or Vrokian commandos. Your forces would be decimated in the first engagement. The general leaned forward. Our soldiers are more capable than you might think, Captain. Theory and practice are vastly different, General. In the field, physical superiority determines survival. Captain Lawson, who had remained silent throughout most of the meeting, cleared her throat. With respect, Captain Drezhtak, combat effectiveness isn't solely determined by physical attributes. Drezhtak turned his golden eyes toward the human captain. How amusing that this tiny creature would challenge him on warfare. Is that so, Captain Lawson? And what would a human know of real combat? Your species has only fought itself a notably unimpressive adversary. The room temperature seemed to drop despite the environmental controls. I believe a demonstration might be more effective than debate. Ambassador Reynolds suggested, his voice carefully neutral. The Coalition has protocols for assessing new species combat capabilities, does it not? Indeed, Drezhtak replied, interest sparked. The proving grounds, though they are typically reserved for species with demonstrated potential. Then permit us to demonstrate, Captain Lawson said. Drezhtak studied her with new curiosity. Was that eagerness he detected? How delightfully naive. Very well. Tomorrow we will arrange a series of physical challenges to assess your capabilities. Nothing too strenuous, he added with a smile that displayed all 4 rows of his teeth. We wouldn't want to send you home in medical transport pods. We appreciate the opportunity, General Patel said. And who will represent the Vrokian forces in these assessments? Why, as captain of this vessel and military liaison to Earth, I will, of course. Drezhtak straightened to his full height, armor plates clicking. Unless you feel that would be unfair. Not at all, Captain Lawson replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We look forward to the exchange. After the humans departed, Lieutenant Garl approached his captain on the bridge. Was that wise, sir? The assessment protocols are binding by coalition law. Drezhtak laughed. Are you suggesting I might lose to a human? The Council wants Earth integrated into our military structure. This demonstration will establish the natural order from the beginning. Humans will serve where they belong in support roles, away from real combat. Intelligence reports suggest caution about everything. Garl, that's their function. My function is to ensure military readiness, which means putting species in their proper place in our hierarchy. The assessment chamber aboard the Indomitable Fate was a massive circular arena, 70 meters in diameter. Various terrains were replicated around its circumference: rocky outcroppings, water features, dense vegetation, urban settings. The center remained an open combat zone with reactive flooring that could shift its properties from soft to hard, rough to smooth, based on programmed scenarios. Coalition representatives from 12 species filled the observation deck above. New species assessments were rare entertainment. Drezhtak entered to appreciative clicks and whistles from his fellow Vrokians. His Henanoli armor had been replaced with lightweight combat gear that still displayed his rank and achievements while allowing full mobility. The human delegation arrived minutes later. Captain Lawson had also changed into what appeared to be standard human military physical training attire. Simple black shorts and a gray-fitted top. So exposed, Drezhtak thought. Her skin looked as fragile as flower petals. Welcome to the assessment chamber, Drezhtak announced, his voice carrying throughout the arena. Today we evaluate Earth's potential contributions to coalition defense forces. Captain Lawson has volunteered to represent human capabilities. He turned to the small human. The assessments begin with tests of basic physical attributes: strength, speed, endurance, reflexes, followed by combat scenarios of increasing complexity. You may withdraw at any point if you find the challenges beyond your capacity. Captain Lawson nodded. Understood. Shall we begin with strength assessment? Eager, aren't you? Drezhtak's mandibles clicked in amusement. Very well. The first test involved lifting progressively heavier weights. Drezhtak easily handled the initial rounds. His Vrokian musculature designed for 3 times Earth's gravity. When Captain Lawson stepped up, he expected immediate failure. To his surprise, she managed the first 3 weight increments with apparent ease. Her technique was flawless, her breathing controlled. At the fourth increment, approximately 50 kilograms, she showed signs of strain but completed the required repetitions. Interesting, Drestek thought. Stronger than expected, though still well below Vrokian norms. The speed trials revealed similar results. The human was quicker than intelligence reports suggested, though still no match for his natural abilities. In the endurance test, however, something unexpected happened. The challenge required maintaining maximum exertion on gravity-enhanced treadmills. As the minutes passed, Drestek felt the expected burn in his muscles, his body efficiently managing the stress. He glanced over at Captain Lawson, expecting to see her struggling or perhaps already eliminated. Instead, she ran steadily, sweat glistening on her skin but her breathing rhythmic and controlled. At the 15-minute mark, when most species would be showing significant fatigue, she appeared to find a second wind. Her pace actually increased. Remarkable stamina for such a small creature, commented a Dracalian observer from above. A momentary surge, Drestek replied, increasing his own pace. Watch. But the momentary surge continued. At 30 minutes, Drestek felt his own legendary endurance tested. At 45 minutes, an uncomfortable realization dawned: the human showed no signs of stopping. At the 1-hour mark, the assessment controller ended the test, declaring it a draw. Drestek stepped off his treadmill, careful not to show the trembling in his legs. Captain Lawson stepped off hers and did something completely unexpected. She smiled. An interesting warm-up, Captain, she said. When do the real assessments begin? Warm-up? Drestek felt a flicker of unease. The combat scenarios will provide more comprehensive data, he replied smoothly. Unless you require a rest period. No need, Lawson said. We can proceed immediately. The first combat scenario involved negotiating an obstacle course while neutralizing automated defense systems, a test of coordination, tactical thinking, and combat reflexes. Drestek completed the course in what he knew was an impressive time, disabling all 12 defense points with minimal damage to his combat scoring. Captain Lawson's approach was entirely different. Where Drestek had powered through obstacles, she flowed around them. Where he had confronted defense systems head-on, she found blind spots and attack angles that required minimal force for maximum effect. Her final score was within 5 percentage points of his own. The observation deck had grown noticeably quieter. Representatives leaned forward, data tablets forgotten in their hands or tentacles or sensory appendages. Unconventional tactics, Drestek said, trying to sound dismissive. Effective in a controlled environment perhaps, but real combat rarely allows for such creativity. Then perhaps the next scenario should be less controlled, Captain Lawson suggested. The combat simulator activated, creating a holographic battlefield interspersed with physical elements. The scenario: defend a position against waves of attackers with limited resources. Drestek's performance was textbook Vrokian efficiency: establish kill zones, manage resources, maintain defensive integrity. His final score: 91% effectiveness. Captain Lawson's approach was anything but textbook. She abandoned conventional defensive positioning, created diversions, used environmental elements in completely unorthodox ways, and seemed to predict attack patterns before they developed. Her final score: 93%. A murmur ran through the observation deck. The programming was clearly simplified for the human's benefit, Drestek announced, mandibles clicking rapidly in irritation. Would you prefer a live demonstration instead? Captain Lawson asked. Drestek stared at the small human female. Was she actually challenging him to direct combat? The absurdity of it almost made him laugh, but the absolute confidence in her stance gave him pause. That would hardly be fair, he replied. Vrokian combat prowess is legendary throughout the Coalition. My species has evolved specifically for warfare, and my species evolved to hunt prey larger and stronger than ourselves, she countered. Sometimes, Captain, evolution takes different paths to similar destinations. The observation deck had fallen completely silent. A controlled sparring match then, Drestek said finally. Non-lethal combat with standard safety protocols. He would put this human in her place but without causing a diplomatic incident. The center of the assessment chamber cleared, reactive flooring setting to neutral firmness. The two combatants faced each other across 10 meters of open space. Standard Coalition rules, announced the assessment controller. 3 contact points or 1 submission for victory. Combat may include strikes, grappling, and throws, no weapons. Begin when ready. Drestak assumed the traditional Vrokian combat stance, balanced, center of gravity low, arms positioned to strike or defend. Captain Lawson's stance was unfamiliar to him, her weight distributed evenly, hands open rather than clenched. They circled each other slowly, Drestak's greater reach keeping the human at a distance. He decided to end this quickly with a demonstration of overwhelming force. He lunged forward, right arm extending in a strike that would connect with her shoulder, a painful but not damaging blow to establish dominance. His hand met empty air as Captain Lawson seemed to flow aside like water, her own hand tapping his extended wrist as it passed. A touch so light he barely registered it. Was she mocking him? He pivoted and struck again, faster this time. Again she wasn't where his blow should have landed. Not just evasion, she had somehow moved to his flank. First contact, Captain Lawson, announced the controller. Drestak blinked in confusion. He hadn't felt, and then he noticed the small red indicator on his combat suit. She had scored a touch so precisely that his combat nerves hadn't even registered it. Anger flared, his blood temperature rising. He launched a combination attack. Movements a blur of Vrokian combat efficiency. Captain Lawson retreated, evaded, deflected. Not a single strike landed cleanly. Your technique is impressive, she said, voice steady despite the exertion. But you telegraph your intentions. Telegraph? He didn't understand the reference. But the implication was clear, she could read his movements before he completed them. Second contact, Captain Lawson, the controller announced after another exchange that ended with her hands somehow inside his guard. A precise touch to what would have been a debilitating strike point in real combat. Whispers rippled through the observation deck. Drestak abandoned technique and lunged forward, using his superior mass and strength to grab the human bodily. His hands closed around her arms finally. Contact. He lifted her from the floor, mandibles clicking in triumph. Then the world spun as Captain Lawson somehow used his own momentum and mass against him. His back slammed into the reactive flooring, the impact knocking the breath from his 4 breathing chambers. Captain Lawson stood over him, not even breathing hard. Third contact and throw. Victory to Captain Lawson, announced the controller. Stunned silence filled the assessment chamber. Drestak lay there, 7 feet of evolved Vrokian warrior staring up at 5.5 feet of human female. Impossible. It was simply impossible. An excellent demonstration, Captain, she said, extending her hand in the human gesture. Your strength and speed are remarkable. The condescension in her tone, the exact tone he had been using with the humans since their arrival, was unmistakable. He ignored the offered hand and rose to his feet, towering over her once again. A sparring match is not combat, he said stiffly. Real warfare has different parameters. Indeed it does, she agreed. Perhaps we should explore those parameters more thoroughly. Before Drestak could respond, Lieutenant Garl's voice came through the chamber's communication system. Captain, priority message from Coalition High Command. The Krell Collective has breached the Orion defense perimeter. All available combat vessels are being redirected to the front. The Krell, the most dangerous species the Coalition had encountered in generations. Their hive mind-controlled drones had overwhelmed 3 planetary defense systems in the past solar cycle. It seems our assessments must be cut short, Drestak said, relieved for the interruption yet strangely disappointed. The indomitable fate will be departing for the front within the hour. You will be returned to Earth before we leave. Actually, Ambassador Reynolds' voice came from the observation deck. The assessment protocols specify that in times of conflict, demonstrated combat capability requires immediate integration into Coalition forces. Isn't that correct? Coalition representative, an elderly Galurian, the official Coalition representative present, bobbed its sensory stalks in agreement. That is correct, Ambassador. Captain Lawson has demonstrated sufficient combat capability for provisional integration. Wait. Drestak objected. One demonstration against a single opponent hardly qualifies. The protocols are quite clear, the Galurian interrupted. The assessment was overseen by a qualified Coalition officer, yourself, Captain, and witnessed by representatives of multiple member species. The human has qualified. Drestek's mandibles clicked in agitation. This is highly irregular. War often is, Captain Lawson said quietly. Ambassador, with your permission, I would like to accompany the indomitable Fate to the front as Earth's military representative. Permission granted, Captain Reynolds replied immediately. I believe it was always our intention to contribute to coalition security as quickly as possible. The gathering in the assessment chamber broke up rapidly as the ship prepared for immediate departure. Captain Lawson left with the human delegation, presumably to collect her equipment and make arrangements. Drestak remained in the chamber alone, replaying the combat in his mind. How had she anticipated his every move? How had a species with no interstellar combat experience produced warriors of such capability? Captain! Lieutenant Garl approached cautiously. Your orders regarding the human? Drestek turned slowly. Assign Captain Lawson guest quarters in the military section, provide her with access to tactical briefings on the Krell Collective, and her role during combat operations. A valid question. What did one do with a human who had just demonstrated capability beyond all intelligence predictions? Tactical observer, Drestek decided. For now, I want to understand what we are dealing with before placing her in a command rotation. Very good, sir. Garl hesitated. Intelligence reports were significantly understated regarding human combat potential. Yes, Garl. I noticed, Drestak replied dryly. The question is, why did intelligence fail, or did the humans deliberately mislead us about their capabilities? Perhaps neither, sir. Captain Lawson may simply be exceptional among her kind. Perhaps. But Drestak didn't believe it. The human had been too confident, too prepared, as if she had been waiting for this opportunity. 6 hours later, the indomitable Fate entered faster-than-light transit toward the Orion perimeter. Captain Drestak summoned Captain Lawson to the tactical briefing room. She arrived precisely on time, now dressed in what appeared to be her species' standard military uniform, dark blue with minimal insignia, simple, practical, like her fighting style.
Captain Lawson, welcome, Drestak said formally. I trust your accommodations are adequate.
They are fine, thank you. Though the environmental controls seem calibrated for Vrokian preferences, our ships were not designed with humans in mind, he replied. Adjustments will be made. No need. Humans adapt quickly. Of course they do, he thought. I have invited you here to discuss the Krell situation and clarify your role during the upcoming engagement. For the next hour they reviewed the tactical situation. The Krell Collective, a hive mind species that controlled millions of drone bodies, had breached coalition defenses in the Orion sector. 3 planets were under direct attack. The indomitable Fate would join a battle group attempting to contain the incursion. Krell tactics are overwhelming force applied with absolute coordination. Drestak explained, no individual drone possesses significant combat capability, but they operate with perfect synchronization. Conventional strategies have proven challenging. Swarm intelligence, Captain Lawson nodded. We have theorized about such species but never encountered one. Then you have no tactical suggestions. Drestak couldn't keep a note of satisfaction from his voice. I didn't say that, she replied. Swarms have inherent vulnerabilities, regardless of the individual unit's capabilities. Has the coalition attempted to locate and target the central control node? The Krell consciousness exists across multiple nodes. Destroy one and the others compensate. We would need to locate and neutralize all primary nodes simultaneously, a practical impossibility given their defensive arrangements. Captain Lawson studied the tactical displays thoughtfully. What about communication disruption between drones and nodes? Attempted. The Krell use multiple redundant communication systems across various energy frequencies. Some we cannot even detect, much less disrupt. She nodded slowly, absorbing the information. And my role in all this? Tactical observer. You will monitor the engagement from the auxiliary bridge and provide alternative perspectives. I see, her tone suggested she understood exactly what he was doing, keeping her visible but away from actual command decisions. This is your first interstellar conflict, Captain Lawson. Observation before integration is standard procedure. Of course, she replied with that same infuriating calm. Though I should mention that General Patel authorized me to offer Earth's full military cooperation should the situation warrant it. Earth is 97 light-years from the conflict zone. What cooperation could you possibly offer? For the first time since he'd met her, Captain Lawson smiled genuinely. That, Captain Dresig, is something you might find interesting to learn. 2 days later, the indomitable Fate arrived at the Orion perimeter with 5 other coalition cattle ships. The situation had deteriorated significantly. 7 planets were now under Krell attack, and early defensive efforts had failed to contain the incursion. On the main bridge, Drestak received updates from Coalition Command. Captain Lawson stood quietly at the auxiliary tactical station where he had assigned her, observing but not participating. Krell vessels have established orbital supremacy around Helios Prime, reported Lieutenant Garl. Planetary defenses are failing. Estimated 12 hours until full Krell control of the surface. Orders from Command? The battle group is to prevent further expansion while reinforcements arrive. Estimated time to reinforcement, 36 hours. Too late for Helios Prime, Dresdek thought grimly. Another world would fall to the Krell Collective. Sir, Lieutenant Garl lowered his voice. The human has been accessing historical combat records concerning the Krell. Her security clearance shouldn't allow such access. Dresdok glanced at Captain Lawson, who was studying displays with intense concentration. What specific records has she accessed? All previous Krell encounters with particular focus on engagement patterns and communication analysis. Interesting. Not the records he would have expected a newcomer to prioritize. Let her continue, but monitor closely. The battle group took position at the designated coordinates, establishing a defensive line to prevent further Krell advancement. Dresdek ordered combat readiness at maximum. Captain Lawson's voice came from the auxiliary station. May I speak with you privately? Dresdek hesitated, then nodded. Lieutenant Garl, you have the bridge. In the adjacent tactical room, Captain Lawson activated a display showing Krell movement patterns across 3 separate engagements. I believe I have identified a vulnerability, she said without preamble. The Krell use a predictable communication protocol during combat maneuvers. It's subtle, but consistent across all recorded encounters. Dresdek studied the display skeptically. Coalition analysts have examined these patterns for years. There is no exploitable vulnerability. Your analysts were looking for communication disruption opportunities. I'm suggesting something different: communication manipulation. Explain. The Krell use a quantum-entangled communication network with tremendous bandwidth, but it follows predictable protocols. We can't block it, but we might be able to inject false data, make the drones see things that aren't there. Dresdek's mandibles clicked in surprise. That's not an approach we have considered. It's how humans have dealt with network security for centuries, she replied. We call it spoofing. And you believe this would work against a hive consciousness? I think it's worth attempting. Especially given the alternative. She gestured toward Helios Prime on the tactical display. We have technology that might be compatible with your systems to attempt this approach. What technology? Earth developed quantum interference systems for our own defense networks. They are experimental, but the principles should translate. Dresdek studied her carefully. You came prepared for this. Captain Lawson met his gaze steadily. Earth has been monitoring the Krell situation since before formal contact with the Coalition. We may be newcomers to interstellar politics, Captain, but we are not naive about interstellar threats. The implications were staggering. Had Earth somehow been gathering intelligence on Coalition threats independently? How was that even possible? Before Dresdek could respond, the ship's alarm sounded. Captain, to the bridge. Lieutenant Garl's voice came through the communication system. Krell vessels have changed course. They are heading directly for our position. They hurried back to the bridge, where the tactical display showed dozens of Krell ships accelerating toward the Coalition battle group. Time to engagement? Dresdek demanded. 17 minutes, sir. Dresdek turned to Captain Lawson. We don't have time to implement untested theories, Captain. We fight as we have trained. Then, with your permission, I will return to my quarters to retrieve something that might help. Dresdek wanted to refuse, to dismiss this human and her claims of special technology, but the memory of the assessment chamber gave him pause. You have 5 minutes, Captain Lawson. After that, all non-essential personnel will be secured for combat operations. She nodded and left the bridge at a run. Lieutenant Garl moved closer to his captain. Sir, do you believe the human actually has technology that could affect the Krell? I don't know, Garl, but I have underestimated her once already. I won't make that mistake again. 4 minutes later, Captain Lawson returned carrying a small metallic case. Permission to connect this to the auxiliary tactical systems, Captain. Drestak hesitated, then nodded to the security officer. Supervise closely. As the Krell fleet approached, Captain Lawson worked quickly, connecting her device to the ship's systems and entering complex command sequences. Sir, Krell vessels entering weapons range in 30 seconds, reported the weapons officer. All vessels, defensive formation Talon 6, Drestak ordered. Prepare to engage on my mark. Captain Lawson called from her station. The system is ready. On your command, it will broadcast a spoofed navigational data stream on the frequencies the Krell use for drone coordination. Drestak made his decision. Do it. Captain Lawson activated her device. For several seconds nothing seemed to happen. The Krell fleet continued its approach, weapons systems powering up according to the tactical readouts. Then something remarkable occurred. 3 Krell vessels suddenly veered off course, colliding with 2 others. Across the formation, drones began executing contradictory maneuvers. What had been perfect coordination dissolved into chaos. It's working, Lieutenant Garl whispered in astonishment. They are fighting each other. All vessels, concentrate fire on the central command ships. Drestak ordered, seizing the opportunity. Full tactical advantage. The coalition battle group struck the disorganized Krell fleet with devastating effect. Without their perfect coordination, the individual drones were vulnerable. Within minutes, the Krell advance had collapsed entirely. As the battle concluded, Drestak turned to find Captain Lawson still at her station, monitoring her device's performance. Your spoofing technique, he said, approaching her. It shouldn't have worked against a quantum-entangled network. She looked up at him with those dark, calm eyes. Quantum networks still have authentication protocols, Captain. We just happened to crack the Krell's particular approach. Happened to? Drestak's mandibles clicked in disbelief. How long has Earth been studying the Krell? Captain Lawson closed her device case carefully. Long enough to understand they represent an existential threat to all sentient life, including ours. We may be newcomers to your coalition, Captain Drestak, but we have been defending ourselves against threats for our entire history. And the demonstration in the assessment chamber, was that part of some human strategy as well? No, she replied with a small smile. That was just me showing you that appearances can be deceiving. Something humans learned a very long time ago. As Coalition Command began transmitting congratulations and new orders to the battle group, Drestak stared at the small human female who had just changed the course of a war. What other surprises did her species have in store, and what would it mean for the Coalition and the Vrokians' place within it? He had a growing suspicion he would find out very soon. The aftermath of the unexpected victory against the Krell brought a strange mixture of triumph and tension aboard the indomitable Fate. Coalition Command had immediately requested detailed reports on the novel tactical approach that had disrupted the Krell coordination. Captain Drestak found himself in the uncomfortable position of explaining a technology he barely understood. The quantum interference device was deployed by our human Lianzan. Captain Lawson, he explained via secure communication to Admiral Vixtorin, the Vrokian fleet commander. Its effectiveness exceeded all projections. A human technology. The Admiral's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation among their kind. How did they develop quantum spoofing capabilities when they have barely achieved interstellar travel? Unknown, Admiral. Captain Lawson has been selective in her technical explanations. I want that technology analyzed immediately, Captain. Full schematics, operational parameters, everything. The Vrokian High Command must understand its principles. Yes, Admiral. Drestak hesitated. There may be diplomatic complications. The human presents this as Earth's contribution to the coalition. A contribution requires transparency, Captain. See to it. The communication ended, leaving Drestak with a growing sense of unease. He turned to Lieutenant Garl, who had been monitoring the exchange. Locate Captain Lawson and bring her to my private briefing room. Discreetly, 20 minutes later, Captain Lawson entered the briefing room. She had changed into a fresh uniform, and appeared entirely too comfortable for someone who had just revealed game-changing military technology to an alien alliance. "You wanted to see me, Captain Dressup, Tak. Coalition Command is quite interested in your quantum interference device," he said without preamble. "As is Vrokian High Command." "I'm not surprised," she replied, taking a seat without being invited to do so. A small breach of protocol that irritated him more than it should. "They want complete technical specifications. Engineering will need to examine the device." Captain Lawson smiled. "That won't be possible. I'm afraid. The device contains proprietary Earth technology. We are happy to deploy it against the Krell, but the internal systems remain under Earth jurisdiction." Driztak's temperature regulation faltered momentarily. "Perhaps I wasn't clear. This isn't a request. Coalition military protocols require full disclosure of all technologies deployed in combat operations." "Funny thing about those protocols," Lawson said, leaning forward slightly, "I read them thoroughly before accepting this assignment. Section 21, Paragraph 4 specifically exempts provisional members from full technology disclosure during their first solar cycle of membership. We are providing the benefit without being required to share the details. Win-win, wouldn't you say?" Drizzt stared at the human with a mixture of fury and, though he would never admit it, respect. She had done her homework. "The Krell are launching a full-scale invasion. This is hardly the time for political maneuvering. On the contrary, Captain. This is precisely the time Earth needs to establish its value to the Coalition. We are small, we are new, and according to your initial assessment, we are barely worth noticing, yet here we are, providing a solution no one else has developed." The human's audacity was breathtaking. "Are you suggesting Earth is leveraging a military crisis for political advantage?" "I'm suggesting Earth deserves recognition as a full partner, not a junior auxiliary," she replied calmly. "We have 6 more quantum interference devices ready for deployment across the battlefront. They can be here within 48 hours, along with trained operators. But they remain Earth technology. And if I refuse these conditions," Captain Lawson shrugged, "then you fight the Krell as you have always fought them. How has that worked out so far?" Before Drestuk could respond, the ship's alert system activated. "Captain, to the bridge," Lieutenant Garl's voice announced. "Priority communication from Coalition Command." "We will continue this discussion later," Drestuk said, rising from his seat. "Of course," Captain Lawson replied, "though you might want to consider that time favors the Krell, not us." On the bridge, Admiral Grelnav of Coalition Command appeared on the central communication display. A Drakelian nearly 9 feet tall with iridescent scales and multiple eye clusters, the Admiral outranked every officer in the sector. "Captain Drestak, your battle group's success against the Krell advance has bought us precious time, however our situation remains critical. Long-range sensors detect 3 additional Krellid fleets converging on the Orion sector. We stand ready to deploy, Admiral. Your new orders are to proceed to the Helios Prime system immediately. The planetary defense forces continue to resist, but orbital bombardment has compromised major population centers. Your primary objective is to disrupt Krell orbital supremacy and create an extraction corridor for essential personnel." "Understood, Admiral." "And the quantum interference technology?" The Admiral's primary eye cluster focused intently. "I have been briefed on the situation. The human Captain Lawson is to deploy her technology as needed. Under your tactical command but with full technical autonomy. Earth's Ambassador Reynolds has agreed to send additional units and operators to key battlefronts. Coalition Council has temporarily waived disclosure requirements given the emergency circumstances." Drestak's mandibles clicked in surprise. "Admiral, with respect, this sets a dangerous precedent." "This is not open for debate, Captain," the Admiral interrupted. "The Krelli have taken 4 worlds in 8 days. We are facing the most significant military crisis in Coalition history. Unconventional solutions require unconventional arrangements." "Yes, Admiral. One more thing, Captain, the Council has granted Captain Lawson provisional field rank equivalent to your own for the duration of this campaign. She will serve as co-commander for all operations involving Earth technology." Drestak felt as if he'd been struck. "Co-commander. Effective immediately. The success of your first engagement has not gone unnoticed, Captain. Coalition Command expects similar results at Helios Prime. Grell, nav out. The communication ended, leaving a stunned silence on the bridge. Lieutenant Garl approached cautiously. Your orders, sir. Set course for Helios Prime, maximum velocity, Drestig ordered, his voice carefully controlled. And locate Captain Lawson. Inform her that her presence is required on the bridge. As co-commander, the final words tasted bitter on his tongue. Within hours, the Indomitable Fate and its accompanying battle group entered the Helios Prime system. The tactical situation was dire. 37 Krell vessels maintained orbital positions around the planet, systematically targeting surface installations. Planetary shields had failed over major population centers, and landing craft deployed Krell ground forces in overwhelming numbers. Captain Lawson stood beside Drezatak on the command platform, studying the tactical displays. She had taken the news of her promotion with infuriating calmness, as if she had expected it all along. The Krell pattern suggests they prioritize communication infrastructure, then defense systems, followed by population centers, she observed. Classic invasion methodology: isolate, neutralize, subjugate. Thank you for the elementary tactical analysis. Drestak replied dryly. I have only fought them in 23 engagements. Your insights are invaluable. She glanced at him, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. 23 engagements, and yet here we are. Drestak ignored the jab. The quantum interference device. Will it work against this many vessels simultaneously? No, its effective radius covers approximately 8 to 10 ships depending on their proximity. We will need to deploy it selectively to create the extraction corridor command requires. Then we concentrate on these vessels. Drestak indicated a cluster of Krell ships in low orbit. Disrupt their coordination, create a gap and hold it long enough for the evacuation ships to escape. Agreed, Captain Lawson nodded, but we should add a diversion to draw additional forces away from the corridor. The Krell respond aggressively to apparent vulnerabilities. A feigned retreat from our support vessels, Drestak suggested, warming to the strategy despite himself. Make them believe they have split our forces successfully. Exactly. And once they commit to pursuit, we activate the interference device and strike from multiple vectors. For a moment, Drestak forgot his resentment. The plan was sound, a combination of traditional coalition tactics and the human's unorthodox approach. Perhaps this co-commander arrangement would not be entirely intolerable. Very well, Lieutenant Garl, signal the battle group. Operation parameters as discussed. As the battle group approached Helios Prime, Drestak addressed the command crew. This operation has 3 phases. First, our support vessels will engage and retreat, drawing Krell pursuit forces away from the primary target zone. Second, the Indomitable Fate and our heavy cruisers will engage the orbital blockade directly, deploying the quantum interference technology to disrupt Krell coordination. Third, we establish and hold an extraction corridor for the planetary evacuation vessels. Timing is critical. We will have approximately 47 minutes before the Krell can reorganize their forces. He turned to Captain Lawson. Co-Commander Lawson will oversee the deployment of the quantum interference device. All relevant systems are under her authority for this operation. The human nodded acknowledgement, then addressed the bridge crew directly. The device requires precise calibration to the specific quantum frequencies the Krell are using in this engagement. My team will need 3 minutes of clear scanning before activation. During that window, we will be vulnerable. Your job is to keep us alive for those 3 minutes. The battle plan executed with surprising precision. The support vessels engaged outlying Krell ships, then initiated a calculated retreat that drew nearly a third of the Krell forces away from the planet. Meanwhile, the Indomitable Fate and 3 heavy cruisers approached the primary orbital blockade at maximum velocity. Krell vessels responding, reported Lieutenant Garl. Attack formation consistent with previous engagements. Maintain course. Drestak ordered. All weapons systems at full readiness. On the auxiliary tactical platform, Captain Lawson and a small team of specialists monitored the quantum interference device. Beginning frequency analysis, she announced. 3 minutes to calibration. Recommend evasive pattern Delta 9 to minimize exposure. Drestak nodded to the navigation officer, who implemented the suggested pattern immediately. The massive battleship began a complex series of maneuvers that kept it from presenting a predictable target profile. Krell vessels adjusting. They are attempting to bracket our approach vectors. Maintain pattern, Drestak ordered. Weapons, prepare for saturation fire on my mark. The ship shuddered as the first Krell energy weapons found their target. Shields holding at 87%, reported the defense officer. 2 minutes to calibration, Captain Lawson called out, her voice steady despite the intensifying battle around them. The indomitable Fate shuddered again as multiple impacts struck the forward shields. Shields at 72% and dropping. Return fire, full spread, Drestak ordered. Target their forward weapons clusters. The battleship's main cannons unleashed devastating energy streams that sliced through the void, striking the lead Krell vessels. The shots landed with precision, but the Krell ships quickly adjusted their formation to compensate for the damaged units. 1 minute to calibration, Captain Lawson announced. Frequency patterns identified and locked. We won't last another minute at this rate of fire, Lieutenant Garl warned as the ship rocked from another series of impacts. Shields at 41%. Drestak made a rapid tactical assessment. All power to forward shields, divert emergency reserves if necessary. That will leave our aft sections vulnerable if they outflank us. The defense officer cautioned. They won't have time, Drestak replied. Once the device activates, we will have tactical superiority. The gamble worked barely. As Captain Lawson counted down the final seconds to activation, the indomitable Fate absorbed punishment that would have crippled a lesser vessel. The forward shields flickered visibly. Power reserves dropping into critical levels. Calibration complete. Device activating. Now, for a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then across the tactical display, the perfect geometric formations of the Krell fleet began to distort. Ships veered from their assigned positions. Weapons fire became erratic. What had been a coordinated assault devolved into individual units without central direction. All vessels concentrate fire on designated targets, Riztaka commanded. Create the corridor exactly as planned. The coalition battle group struck with devastating precision, carving a path through the disorganized Krell blockade. Ship after ship fell to the concentrated fire, unable to coordinate defensive measures. Corridor established, Lieutenant Garl reported triumphantly. Planetary Defense Forces confirm evacuation vessels preparing for immediate launch. Maintain position, Drestak ordered. How long will the interference effect last? Captain Lawson checked her instruments. Approximately 22 minutes before the Krell identify and adapt to spoofed frequencies. After that they will implement countermeasures. That should be sufficient. Captain. The sensor officer interrupted urgently. Detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the system's outer boundary. Configuration matches Krell heavy assault carriers. Drestak studied the tactical display with growing concern. How many? 5 carriers, each with approximately 200 attack drones. 1,000 fresh Krell vessels entering the battle. Even with the quantum interference device, they couldn't hope engage such overwhelming numbers. Time to intercept? 18 minutes at current velocity. Captain Lawson moved to Drestak's side, studying the same display. The evacuation ships need at least 25 minutes to clear the planetary atmosphere and reach safe jump distance. Then we need to delay the Krell reinforcements, Drestak stated simply. The interference device won't affect them until they are within range, Captain Lawson noted. And we can't leave our position without abandoning the extraction corridor. Drestak's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the tactical options. None were favorable. We need to split our forces, he decided finally. The indomitable Fate will hold the corridor. Our 3 cruisers will intercept the Krell reinforcements and delay them as long as possible. That's a suicide mission for the cruisers, Captain Lawson observed quietly. Yes, Drestak agreed. It is. There's another option, she said after a moment. One with better survival probability for all ships involved. I'm listening. The quantum interference device can be modified to function as a self-contained unit. We can load it onto a high-speed transport, program a specific intercept trajectory and launch it directly at the Krell reinforcements. When it reaches optimal range, it activates automatically. A remote deployment. Will that work? In theory, yes. but someone needs to be aboard to make final calibration adjustments. The Kreller are already adapting to our current frequency patterns. We need to modify the approach for the new vessels. Drestuk understood immediately what she was suggesting. Who would pilot such a mission? Captain Lawson met his gaze steadily. I would. It's my technology. I know how to maximize its effectiveness. Out of the question, you are too valuable as a technical asset. My team is fully capable of operating the primary device here. The mission requires someone who can make instant adjustments based on Krell response patterns. That's me. Drestuk felt conflicted in a way unfamiliar to him. This human had challenged him, embarrassed him, and disrupted his command structure. Yet her tactical insights were undeniable. And her courage, well, that was worthy of a Vrokian. The transport has a 94% probability of destruction once the Krell realize what's happening, he said finally. I'm aware of the odds, Captain, but the transport has escape pods. Once the device is activated and locked, I can attempt extraction. Maybe 70-30 odds, but better than sacrificing 3 cruisers with full crews. Lieutenant Garl cleared his throat. Captain, evacuation ships are launching now, estimated clearance time 24 minutes. Krell reinforcements will intercept in 16 minutes. Prepare a transport immediately, Drestuk ordered. Full engines, minimal defensive systems. Everything we can strip to increase speed. As the crew hurried to comply, Drestuk pulled Captain Lawson aside. This isn't necessary, you know? A remote pilot system wouldn't work, she interrupted. The calibration requires organic decision-making. The Krell adapt too quickly for automated responses. You have proven your point about human capability. You don't need to sacrifice yourself to make Earth look heroic. Captain Lawson's eyes narrowed. Is that what you think this is, a public relations stunt? Isn't it? Earth joins the coalition and immediately provides miracle technology and heroic officers. You really don't understand us at all, do you? She shook her head. Humans don't seek out death, Captain, but we accept necessary risks to protect others. It's not about Earth looking heroic, it's about those evacuation ships filled with civilians. Drestak studied her, genuinely confused. You would risk your life for non-humans, for species you have barely met, wouldn't you? She countered. Isn't that why you joined the Coalition Defense Force, to protect all sentient life? Not just your own kind. Before Drestak could respond, Lieutenant Garl approached. Transport ready in Docking Bay 3, Captain. Engineering has increased engine output by 27% by removing all non-essential systems. Thank you, Lieutenant. Have the quantum interference device transferred immediately. As Captain Lawson prepared to depart for the docking bay, Drestak made a sudden decision. I'm going with you. She turned back, surprised. That's not necessary. It is. You will need someone to manage defensive systems while you handle the device calibration. 2 operators increase survival probability. And the indomitable Fate, who commands here. Lieutenant Garl is perfectly capable. The corridor strategy is established. This mission requires experienced command decisions that cannot be programmed in advance. Captain Lawson studied him for a moment, then nodded. Very well, we launch in 5 minutes. The transport was little more than engines, a control cabin and a cargo hold now occupied by the quantum interference device. As they boarded, engineering crews were still making final adjustments to maximize speed. Stripped her down to nothing but go fast, explained the chief engineer, a stocky Tellarite with oil-stained coveralls. Removed all armor plating except around the control cabin. She's fast but fragile, one good hit, and you are stardust. Perfect, Captain Lawson replied. We don't plan on getting hit. Course plotted to intercept the Krell reinforcements at maximum effective range of the device, Drestuk confirmed, taking the pilot's position. Launch in 30 seconds. As the docking bay doors opened, revealing the chaotic battlefield beyond, Captain Lawson secured herself in the co-pilot seat. You know, she said, conversationally, as if they weren't about to fly a minimally protected transport into a swarm of enemy warships. I didn't expect this from you. Expected me to stay safely on the bridge. Dresduk's mandibles clicked in what passed for a Vrokian smile. I commanded assault scouts for 12 years before receiving a battleship. This feels nostalgic. The transport launched, its enhanced engines propelling it away from the indomitable Fate at acceleration that strained even Drestak's evolved physiology. Captain Lawson grimaced but made no complaint as the G-forces pressed her into her seat. "Impressive modifications," she managed to say. "Your engineers know their business." "Best in the coalition," Drestak agreed, making minute adjustments to their course. ETA to intercept range 4 minutes, 17 seconds. In the cargo hold, the quantum interference device hummed as Captain Lawson monitored its status remotely. Beginning preliminary calibration. The lead carrier is already broadcasting control frequencies to its drone complement. The transport rocketed through space, a tiny speck against the vastness on a direct course toward the approaching Krill fleet. On the sensor display, the 5 massive carriers and their swarm of attack drones formed an intimidating wall of hostile intent. "Krill sensors have detected us," Drestak reported. "Defensive posture shifting. They are trying to determine if we are a threat." "Good. Let them wonder." Captain Lawson's fingers danced across her control panel. 2 minutes to optimal range. "I'm going to need access to the device directly for final adjustments." "Go. I will handle the flying." As she unstrapped and moved toward the cargo hold, Drestak called after her. "Captain Lawson." She paused, looking back. "In the assessment chamber, that combat technique. What do humans call it?" The smile flickered across her face. "Aikido. The art of using an opponent's force against them. Appropriate for your strategy against the Krell as well." "Very." She disappeared into the cargo hold. The transport continued its headlong rush toward the Krell fleet. The massive carriers loomed larger on the view screen, their escort drones beginning to move into intercept patterns. 1 minute to optimal range, Drestak called out. "Krell defensive systems activating." "Almost ready." Captain Lawson's voice came through the internal communication system. "The frequency patterns are more complex than our previous encounter. They are learning." The first energy pulses from Krell defense weapons flashed past the transport, near misses that illuminated the cabin with eerie light. "Evasive pattern initiated," Drestak reported, his hands moving instinctively across the controls. The transport banked and rolled, its stripped-down mass allowing maneuvers that would tear apart a regular vessel. 30 seconds to range. Krell increasing fire intensity. The transport shuddered as a glancing hit struck its outer hull. "Hull integrity at 78%, Drestak reported, "no critical systems damaged." "Device calibration complete," Captain Lawson announced. "Ready for activation at optimal range." 20 seconds. More shots flashed past, the Krell gunners adjusting to the transport's evasive pattern. Another hit, more substantial this time, sent vibrations through the entire vessel. "Hull integrity at 42%. We cannot sustain another direct hit." 10 seconds to optimal range. The Krell carriers filled the view screen now, their massive forms eclipsing the stars behind them. Drones swarmed around them like insects protecting a hive, their weapon systems all targeting the approaching transport. 5 seconds. "Activating now," Captain Lawson called out, "device at full power." A pulse of invisible energy radiated from the transport, expanding outward at the speed of light. For a moment nothing seemed to happen. Then chaos erupted across the Krell formation. Drones collided with each other, weapon systems fired randomly. The perfect coordination that made the Krell so deadly dissolved into individual units without guidance. "It's working," Drestak confirmed, watching the sensor readings. "The drone swarms are breaking formation. Not just breaking, they are attacking each other." Captain Lawson added, returning to the control cabin. "I modified the interference pattern to generate false friend or foe identifications. Some drones now register others as enemies." "Brilliant," Drestak admitted. "How long will the effect last?" "With the modified patterns, at least 40 minutes. More than enough time for the evacuation ships to clear the system." The transport rocked violently as a stray shot from a confused drone struck their aft section. "Engine stability failing," Drestak reported. "We need to extract now." "Agreed. The device is self-sustaining at this point." Captain Lawson moved to the escape pod controls, setting coordinates for rendezvous with the indomitable Fate. Another hit rocked the transport, warning lights flashing across every console. "Hull breach, in the cargo section. We have 2 minutes before total structural failure." Escape pod prepped and ready, Captain Lawson reported. Let's go. They abandoned the control cabin and hurried to the single escape pod at the transport's midsection. As Drestok sealed the hatch behind them, the vessel shuddered continuously, metal screaming as it tore apart. Launch now! The escape pod ejected from the dying transport, its small engines firing immediately to put distance between them and the inevitable explosion. Through the viewport, they watched as the transport finally succumbed to its damage, exploding in a brief, brilliant flare against the backdrop of the confused Krell fleet. Pod systems nominal, Captain Lawson reported, checking the control panel. Estimated rendezvous with the indomitable Fate in 27 minutes. If they hold position, Drestek noted. The extraction corridor must remain their priority. Agreed. They fell silent, the small pod drifting through space, its minimal engines pushing it steadily away from danger. Around them the battle continued, but from their perspective it was just distant flashes of light and energy. You know, Captain Lawson said after a while, when I was assigned this mission I was briefed extensively on Vrokian psychology. Your species has a reputation for extreme competitiveness and resistance to outside innovation. An accurate assessment, Drestok admitted. We are traditional in our approach to warfare. Yet here you are, in an escape pod with a human, after implementing a completely unconventional battle strategy. Circumstances evolve. Tactics must evolve with them. Is that the official Vrokian position now? She asked with a hint of amusement. No, he replied honestly, that is my position. The High Command will likely have different opinions. They usually do. Another comfortable silence fell between them. The pod sensors indicated they were clear of immediate danger, though random fire from confused Krell vessels occasionally flashed in the distance. Your combat technique, Drestek said suddenly. Aikido, you said it uses an opponent's force against them. That's right. Could you explain the principles? Captain Lawson looked at him with surprise, then genuine interest. It begins with a fundamental idea that direct opposition to superior force is inefficient. Instead, one learns to blend with the attack, redirect it, and control the engagement through balance and timing rather than strength. This is how Earth approaches all conflicts. Not all, she admitted. We have plenty of direct force approaches too, but we have learned over centuries of fighting among ourselves that adaptability often trumps raw power. Fighting among yourselves. Drestek mused. The intelligence reports mentioned this. Your species has no unified government until recently. That's right, thousands of years of separate nations, cultures and militaries, countless wars and conflicts. Yet you survived. We did more than survive, we learned. Each conflict taught us something new about strategy, about ourselves, about our potential. Drestok considered this carefully. Perhaps this is what intelligence meant about not underestimating humans. Not your current capability, but your adaptability. It's our greatest strength, she agreed. We see problems from multiple perspectives because we come from multiple backgrounds. What looks like weakness are divisions, our differences became our advantage. The pod's communication system crackled to life. Escape pod Charlie 7, this is Indomitable Fate. We have you on sensors and are dispatching a recovery vessel. Maintain current course. Acknowledged. Indomitable Fate. Drestok responded. Status of evacuation operation. Complete success, Captain. All civilian ships have cleared the system. Krell forces remain in disarray. Coalition Command sends congratulations on the success of the mission. Drestok glanced at Captain Lawson, informed Command that the mission's success is credited to Earth's technology and Captain Lawson's tactical innovations. When he switched off the communication, he found the human watching him with an unreadable expression. That was unexpected, she said quietly. Credit where it's due, Captain. Another tradition my species values. Along with honor in combat and respect for worthy adversaries? Indeed. He paused, mandibles clicking softly as he considered his next words. When we return to the Indomitable Fate, I will be recommending that Earth receive full military integration status within the Coalition. Your contribution has been significant. Thank you, Captain. That means a great deal coming from you. Through the viewport they could see the recovery vessel approaching. The massive form of the Indomitable Fate visible in the distance. Tell me, Captain Lawson, Dredthestake said as they prepared to be retrieved. Are all human soldiers as capable as you? She smiled. No. But neither are all Vrokian captains as adaptable as you. A fair assessment. He extended his hand in the human gesture he had previously dismissed. Perhaps we have more to learn from each other than either of us initially believed. Captain Lawson took his hand firmly. I suspect that's true of all species in the coalition, Captain. We just needed the right circumstances to recognize it. And the right people, Drestak added, surprising himself with the sentiment. As the recovery vessel locked onto their escape pod, Drestak reflected on how completely his perception had changed in just a few days. The human he had dismissed as insignificant had proven to be a warrior worthy of respect, a tactician of considerable skill and now perhaps an ally. The Krell Collective would continue to threaten the coalition. The war was far from over. But for the first time in many cycles Drestak felt genuine optimism about its outcome, not because of superior strength or advanced technology but because of something the Vrokians had rarely considered important: perspective. Different species, different approaches, different strength combined into something greater than the sum of its parts. Perhaps that was the true purpose of the coalition all along. Ready to return to duty, Captain? Captain Lawson asked as the recovery vessel completed its docking procedure. Indeed, Drestak replied. We have a war to win, together.